Hi again. I know I just disappeared, and then quite literally as I hit end show, the Steelers decided to trade for DK Metcalf. So, hello, welcome to Black and Gold Breakdown. Subscribe to the channel. That I don't know what to say. I'm very excited. We've been waiting for a long time for the Steelers to make a move like this, where last year we thought, all right, hey, it could be Brandon Ayuk, and then we spent an entire spring and summer doing this whole song and dance between the Steelers and the 49ers. Will they, won't they? Obviously, Brandon Ayuk remained in San Francisco. And then, Van Jefferson was the number 2 receiver for the entire 2024 season. And nothing against Van Jefferson, God bless him, but they couldn't do that again. And so we've been talking, these past few shows about, man, Omar Khan really needs to do something to gain some of that steam back, because he's kind of been coasting off a Chase Claypool trade that happened a long time ago. And this was a big move to do it. The Steelers trade a second-round pick to Seattle in exchange for DK Metcalf. And on top of that, they give DK Metcalf a 5-year, $150 million extension, which is going to keep him in Pittsburgh till 2030. Now, with that, what's going to happen with George Pickens? Because they're not going to pay 2 receivers huge money. At least I don't think they will. They could. I could be wrong. Especially if they have a quarterback on a rookie contract after this season, or if Justin Fields works out and they can work something out money-wise there. I don't know. And that's me talking, assuming that Justin Fields will be the guy. But we've seen the Eagles they've been able to pay everybody through getting around in different ways with prorated bonuses and stuff like that. So technically they could pay both guys. I just don't foresee them doing that. So whatever this means for George Pickens, we can worry about at a later time. Right now, DK Metcalf is a Steeler, and that's something to be excited about. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I do worry that, does this mean that it's probably going to be Russ? I certainly hope not. But again, I also said a few days ago when talking about the quarterback situation, if the Steelers get DK Metcalf and it's Russ, I could at least be talked into it. I'm going to stick to my word there and say I can at least be talked into that being fun for a year. So, oh, man, this time of year in the NFL is crazy. Not just this, by the way, but Josh Allen gets the most guaranteed money in the history of football. The 2 teams that I cover more than anybody, the Steelers and the Bills, doing stuff at the exact same time. I just screwed it back on like Frankenstein with this little, whatever the hell he puts in his neck. Chaotic, half hour. So with this, and I see a lot of people commenting it, DK feels like a Russ signing. Maybe. It's not what I want. I've been pretty clear that I don't want Russell Wilson to come back. Again, nothing against him personally. He's nice guy and everything like that. It's just I saw what this looked like last year, and it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence for me if that's who they're bringing back. But like I said, when we were talking about if Fields leaves and it being Russ, I did say, all right, I could at least be talked into Russ if DK Metcalf gets traded to Pittsburgh. I feel like this is God calling my bluff. So this is, oh man, what a time to be alive. Nick Farabaugh, by the way, everybody who follows me or just follows the Steelers beat on Twitter, Nick Farabaugh, on his way here, shoots me a text, all caps, brother, I'm on the side of the road right now. So he's doing God's work for Penn Live, either doing a write-up for this or maybe doing an emergency podcast on the side of the road somewhere in Pittsburgh on his way here. The Steelers beat is scrambling right now, and there's no rest for the wicked. Nick Farbaugh's doing this in his car. I jump back on after talking about Sam Darnold. So, goodness gracious. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% going to be Russell Wilson, because A, they immediately signed DK Metcalf to a 5-year extension. Russell Wilson's not going to be here for 5 years, even if he does come back next year. So, it could very well be Justin Fields. It could be Sam Darnold. It could be Aaron Rodgers. Whoever it's going to be in 2025, we're going to find out soon enough. They want it to be Justin Fields. That's who they prefer. That's 100% fact. They want it to be Justin Fields. It just depends on if they can come to a monetary agreement. And if they can't, I think they're going to pivot to Aaron Rodgers or Sam Darnold. Again, I think that Russell Wilson, they would prefer not to bring him back, but I understand why everybody would be like, oh, well, they traded for DK Metcalf. I wonder if it would be Russ. I think that he goes to the Giants. But again, we will find out soon enough who's right and who's wrong about that. So, and Brad adds, it was for a second, and they also swapped 6th and 7th picks. Yeah, I know Pelissaro originally reported, I'm going to have to look here as we get more updated. It's Pelissaro saying that it was the Steelers sending a 2. Let me see if we have like the full updated stuff going on here. But okay, so DK Metcalf had 1 year and $18 million left on his old deal. Now he gets a 4-year, $132 million extension, $33 million per year that puts him under contract through the 2029 season and makes him one of the NFL's highest paid receivers. Let me see if Schefter said anything about the overall compensation for this thing. Does not look okay. So yes, so the Steelers are sending a 2nd-round draft pick to the Seahawks and flipping picks in the 6th and 7th rounds. Okay, lovely. So now, Bleacher Report just tweeted out a look at the Steelers roster. So, it could be either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. You got Jalen Warren, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, Calvin Austin. That's far better than what they had last year. So, muted the mic there for a quick minute. This also gives a quick insight into what they'll do in the draft, because now that they've traded for DK Metcalf and they have George Pickens, I think that we can pretty much close the book on them drafting somebody like Emeka Egbuka, Matthew Golden, Tet McMillan. I don't think they're going to go receiver in the 1st round. I think that they are going to try to get one of these big defensive tackles, whether it be Kenneth Grant from Michigan. I think that Mason Graham's going to go in the top 10. So I think Grant, the other Michigan kid, is going to be the one that they would target there. Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan. I think that they're going to go interior defensive lineman with their 1st round pick. They could also maybe go cornerback. I think it'll be on the defensive side of the ball with their 1st round pick, though. So now we wait and see who the quarterback's going to be. Tim said he signed for $5 and $150. So we still had a year left on his current deal. The Steelers gave him a 4-year, $132 million extension. So in total, with Pittsburgh, he'll be on the books for 5 years, $150 million. Adam asked, what's his cap hit going to be this year? That's a good question. Like I said, his base salary, I think, is $18 million. So we can look at his contract real quick just to see what the total cap hit would be. As soon as that loads in, I will happily tell you. So 2025 cap hit is $18 million. So not bad for a high-end receiver. Tony says, Jarrett, corner seems more important to me. I would agree. I think it'll either be defensive tackle or corner that they do. And look, they still have an entire free agency period to make some additions. So, if they make a big splash at cornerback, then that'll really hone in, okay, they're going to go defensive tackle. Or they can make a big splash at defensive tackle, and that would open up the ability to take a corner. But I think it's going to be one of those two positions. But DK Metcalf is a Steeler, and that's something to be excited about. Regardless of all this quarterback stuff, it's pretty likely that whoever is the quarterback in 2025 isn't the quarterback in 2026. So this is a long, long-term booking type of move for the Steelers. That's looking far past just this year. And I think giving him the extension, again, Could they pay DK Metcalf and George Pickens? Sure. We've seen the Eagles pay both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both got paid by the Dolphins. So, I get it. But I'm seeing a lot of people say, hey, do they trade Pickens now? Maybe. I think that DK is one of those guys that you can acquire and then at least validate trading Pickens. Because before you do that, you can't just trade Pickens. Then if you wanted to trade for somebody else, if they traded Pickens, and they would go to the Broncos and say, hey, we want Cortland Sutton. And be like, well, you've got nobody on your roster right now, so you're going to have to really give us a lot here because we know that we can hold you to that. All right. Schefter, again, just tweeting stuff out about DK Metcalf heading to Pittsburgh. So if they were going to trade Pickens, I think they had to get another legit number one guy first. They couldn't move on from him and then try. They couldn't do it the other way around because, like I just said, teams would look at that and be like, oh, yeah, you clearly need a receiver, so we're going to really hike up the price for this guy rather than just give him to you for what we were originally going to give him to you for because now we know we can. Tim says they're going to be battling for the number 14 jersey. Yeah, I don't know who's going to... I mean, look, if they trade Pickens, there's not going to be a battle. It'll be DK's. I don't know what number he's going to wear. I wonder what number... He wore 14 at Ole Miss, didn't he? So, goodness gracious. I feel like those are all going to be things to pay attention to throughout the rest of this free agency period. Because remember, this time last year, the Steelers were making moves every other day. They traded Deontay Johnson. They signed Russ. They trade for Justin Fields. And in between signing Russ and trading for Fields, they trade away Kenny Pickett. So it felt like every other day they were making some sort of ginormous headline move. And if they want to repeat that this year, or if they had any real want to trade Pickens, now they can really do it and at least validate it and say, well, we got DK Metcalf. We could at least move on from him. Sign some guys in the offseason. It's if they trade Pickens, they can still draft a receiver in the first round if they want to. That's fine. But they'll also sign somebody in free agency. I think they were going to do that regardless. So now if you sign a guy like Darius Slayton, who's coming off a little bit of a down year in New York, so he's going to be cheaper than he probably would have been had he been a free agent last year. You can sign Darius Slayton, and you can still draft a guy in the first round if you want to, if you trade George Pickens. And by the way, I would be completely on board with DK Metcalf, Matthew Golden, and Darius Slayton as the top three. I know a lot of people would disagree. I kind of want him to trade George Pickens. DK Metcalf and George Pickens in the same locker room, I can't imagine how toxic that would be. I'll find out firsthand when I'm there for OTAs, and I'll report back to you. But I don't know what that's going to look like. Especially if they start struggling. If they lose two games in a row, and people are pissed, and George isn't getting the ball enough as much as he would like, or DK's not getting the ball as much as he would like. I don't know how you could have both those guys share a locker room. I love DK. He's a special talent, but he's also a bit of a diva. Which, by the way, most star receivers are. I'm not trying to dunk on DK. I'm happy he's a Steeler. Welcome to Pittsburgh, DK Metcalf. I'll buy you a beer. But we also got to acknowledge the fact that, these guys have egos, probably more so than any position in football. And there could be some bad hardwiring that would go into if both of them were there. But if you're a team like the Chargers, I mean, would you not call the Steelers and be like, hey, we'll give you a 2 for George Pickens? I'm all right. Bon voyage, George, enjoy Los Angeles. And by the way, I think that Jim Harbaugh would be the perfect coach who could handle George Pickens and contain that as much as he could. They go khaki shopping together or whatever. And I think that Justin Herbert would be a great quarterback for George Pickens because you'd have Ladd McConkey opposite of him. And it would help Justin Herbert become the deep ball thrower that he was back in 2021 when he was throwing 38 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. So I think a team like that would make perfect sense for Pickens. I think a team like Washington would make a lot of sense for Pickens, and I think that culture would really suit him well. Richard says we could get that second round pick back for Pickens. That's what I'm saying. And I think that would make a lot of sense. The fact that they giving up a 2, I mean, that's not nothing. That's, a high draft pick. But anybody who knows me knows I'm team F them picks. If you can go get great players, go get great players. But getting the second round pick back, if you ship off Pickens and you sign a Darius Slayton, I think it makes more sense because in a lot of ways, like DK Metcalf and George Pickens, like having both of them on the roster is kind of redundant because they do a lot of the same things, or they're both, I don't want to say, I used the term one trick pony a lot last year and that kind of sounds negative, but like DK Metcalf is hey, toss me a jump ball, I'll go get it. Or get me a slant, I'm 6'5", 240, and I'm chiseled like a Greek god. Nobody's going to bring me down on first contact. I'll get extra yards after I get the ball. He's not, a refined route runner. He's not known for his route tree, but if you get the ball in his hands short or if you throw it to him deep, he'll go get it. That's a lot of what George Pickens does. So I could see there being a notification that hits our phones here in the next little bit, maybe not tonight, but in the next few days that says they trade Pickens because it's kind of redundant having both Pickens and DK on the roster. And I just don't think that they were ever going to pay Pickens to begin with. I just think that there's too much there to worry about where they just don't want to. And again, I could be wrong. I'm not going to pretend to be completely in the know on that, but I don't think that they would pay both of them. And I think it's kind of redundant to have both of them at the same time. What are your thoughts on going after Darnold? Go watch the video I did 20 minutes ago. In short, I think there's a lot of risk with it. I don't feel good about paying Sam Darnold $36 million a year, which I think would roughly be what he goes for. Baker Mayfield got 3 years, $100 million a couple years ago from Tampa Bay. With the cap going up, I think naturally a deal for Darnold would go up, so it would probably be in that 3-year, 110 range. I wouldn't give that to Sam Darnold. I would much rather them do just like a 2-year, $36 million deal for Fields. That makes a lot more sense to me. And again, as I've said for a while, and I give credit to Alan Saunders for reporting this for Steelers Now. Alan's great. Go and support all the Steelers Now, guys. Russell Wilson legitimately pissed off a lot of people in the Steelers building when a very clearly leaked report from his camp came out talking about, well, Arthur Smith took away Russell Wilson's ability to call audibles at the line of scrimmage. That's why Russell Wilson and the offense struggled down the stretch. The Steelers weren't happy about that getting leaked. And it was very, very clearly leaked from Russ's camp. And that pissed off a lot of people in the building. I don't think they want Russ back. I know for a fact there's guys in the building that don't want him back. I would bet my life Arthur Smith doesn't want him back. And I'd fairly bet Mike Tomlin probably doesn't want him back. I know I said, a week or so ago that I'd bet that Russell Wilson is probably, or Tomlin's probably a Wilson guy. But after, hearing some stuff at the combine and whatnot, I think that I probably was a little bit off on that. I think that the vast majority of people in the building, I should say, I know the vast majority of people in the building want Fields. And I don't know if Russell Wilson would want to go back just because of all this and whatever tension would be going on in the building. Maybe he just goes to the Giants if they give him an offer. We'll find out soon enough. In terms of my wish list for quarterbacks, it would be Fields, Aaron Rodgers. I don't even know who 3 would be. I guess you could put Darnold there. It would probably be some sort of flyer. Like if they traded for Joe Milton, we're like, fuck it, we'll start Joe Milton this year. All right. Joe Milton just launching piss missiles to DK Metcalf. Actually, I could be talked into that. It would be totally chaotic. And there will be games where Joe Milton goes like 10 of 30 with 4 picks. But if you're going to be like mediocre, at least be chaotic and fun instead of boring, which the Steelers have been boring for far too long. I'm just waiting for updates here in terms of, are we going to get more trades coming? And by the way, one of the best on the Steelers beat, one of the best, YouTube guys on here, Derek Bell from Steelers Now also says, my guess is that Pickens is dealt before the draft to recoup some capital. Exactly how I feel. It just doesn't make sense to have both him and DK Metcalf on the roster. They both do a lot of the same things, and I don't think they would coexist very well. So I know, again, a lot of people saying, Brett, the latest saying, does Pickens get moved? My guess right now, yes. And if I had to pick what teams he goes to, I would say the Chargers. I would say the Commanders. Those would be my top two. If the Buccaneers wanted to get kind of fun and add George Pickens opposite of Mike Evans with Baker Mayfield, by the way, you want to send George Pickens to a quarterback who won't take any shit, send him to Baker Mayfield. That could be fun. It could also be completely horrendous. You want to send him to Jacksonville? I feel like Jacksonville would make that deal. Put him opposite of Brian Thomas Jr. Send him back down to the South. He's from Alabama. That's close enough to Florida. There's plenty of teams that would give the Steelers that second round pick back for George Pickens. And I think before draft time, we're going to see him playing in a different uniform. And I'm okay with that. Especially once they sign guys in free agency, whoever that may be. Maybe I don't know if they're going to be able to sign Chris Godwin because reports are that he's going to get a hefty bag this offseason, even with his injury. But again, Darius Slayton, that's been a name that the Steelers have been very much linked to and interested in. If he's the third receiver and you want to draft a Matthew Golden, I'm all in for that. Or if you want to take a defensive tackle in the first round and you want to take, a Jaden Higgins out of Iowa in the second, I'm cool with that too. So I'm very happy to see DK Metcalf come to Pittsburgh. I'm excited to see what the complete fallout ends up being. But I do think that George Pickens does get dealt sooner than later, within the next month or so. I don't know if it'll be, a draft day trade. I think it'll probably be done before the draft, but I do think he gets moved. Because, like I said, him and DK do a lot of the same stuff. I don't think both of them would coexist in an offense. I think both of them are just guys who want the ball and they want their touches and whatnot. And when things start going south, especially George Pickens, he's going to get pissed and throw a hissy fit on the field. So I think they're going to trade George Pickens. I think them trading for DK and immediately paying him says a lot. And then sign a guy like Darius Slayton, draft Matthew Golden, draft Emeka Egbuka, draft Tet McMillan, do something, and then have a receiving room of DK and a draft pick on the outside, Darius Slayton as your primary slot guy who can also play on the outside if need be. He's more than capable of doing that, but I think having all three of those guys on the field at the same time would work. But if you want to move him out to the outside and work Calvin Austin in as your fourth wide receiver, your wide receiver room is miles better than what it was last year at that point. So this is exciting times for the Steelers. I say that now in preparation for them to very much upset me with whoever the quarterback's going to be. But this is a forward-thinking move, trading for DK Metcalf, signing him, because, like I've said, the best thing that they can do is load up on weapons and try to set up whoever it is in 2025 to show that they can be the long-term future. And if they aren't, then at least they already have those weapons in place for the long-term future for whoever they draft in 2026. So very happy that they got this done. Very excited to see what this week's going to bring. It's going to be a chaotic week. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because I'm going to talk about all of it. I'm going to try to do it as soon as it breaks. So all these signings that take place, especially on the Steelers end, going to try to get to it as much and as quickly as possible. So be sure to subscribe to the channel for all of that. Chaotic day. chaotic day. We'll see who the quarterback is soon enough. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hopefully they don't do something else in 5 minutes where I got to be back on here. We'll find out. But appreciate y'all for tuning in. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all that fun YouTube stuff. If you want to know when I go live, turn notifications on, do all that. And I will talk to you soon. More Steelers stuff going to be coming this week of NFL free agency. So have a good night. We'll talk soon. Take care. Until then.